Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. This is the time of year when the days are the shortest. During December and into January, our region sees less than 9 hours of daylight. That compares to more than 15 hours of light in June and July. Because of the short days and lack of sunlight, this is also the time of year that medical professionals see cases of seasonal affective disorder, also known as SAD. To learn more, I'm joined by two medical experts from the University of Vermont. Dr. Michael Lamantia is the head of geriatric medicine at the UVM Medical Center, and he is the director of the university's Center on Aging. Dr. Jennifer Hall is also with the Medical Center. She specializes in geriatric psychiatry. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
You on this really important topic. So, Dr. Hall, let's start with you. How would you define seasonal affective disorder?
So seasonal affective disorder is actually a type of depression and tends to occur during the winter months and will recur from season to season. So what typically happens when people have seasonal affective disorder is that they may feel sad or blue at the beginning of fall, and then symptoms tend to resolve or improve once spring or summer arrives.
Yeah. So it's definitely a seasonal thing. So some of the signs of that. So how do we know that this isn't just this happens to everybody?
Mm-hmm. So some of the symptoms of seasonal affective disorder include, again, feeling sad or blue, and then in addition you can have symptoms of low energy, not really wanting to do much or withdrawing from activities, as well as some increased appetite, which can contribute to weight gain and craving carbohydrates.
Which would also contribute to weight gain.
Correct.
Very, very likely. So Dr. Lamantia, tell us about who suffers from this. You're both experts in geriatrics, so is it mainly a problem of the elderly?
No, in fact, this is a problem that we see arise amongst younger adults. This happens predominantly among people who are in their 20s or 30s for the first time. But since it's a recurrent disorder, and something that can happen season after season, if it's not treated adequately, you can see people who are later in life who still suffer with this.
Right. So in that way, if you have it one year, or you're a young person, or you know somebody that has it, it's likely it will recur unless you start taking some action.
Correct. So this is a recurrent disorder and something that you're at risk for. You're at high risk of having it happen again if you've had it in the past. Wow. And so it's important to recognize it and then get a plan of action in place.
And plan of action.
Plan of action. So there are lots of different types of treatments for seasonal affective disorder. Probably the most common and most often implemented is using a light box or phototherapy. And so this is a very bright light that you can use in the morning, and it's different than what we typically see with standard light bulbs or daylight bulbs that you might be able to pick up from your local home improvement store. Right. And people will use those lights in the morning for about 20 or 30 minutes. And essentially what that does is help mimic some of the natural sunlight that we might be missing, particularly in those winter months.
And are there lights that you can pick up in the hardware store, or these are specialized lights you really need to get through a medical?
These are quite specialized lights, and they have to have a certain brightness, which is 10,000 lux or lumens. So they're very specific lights, but you can get them through different vendors that you could find on Amazon or on the internet. However, wanting to check with a medical professional to make sure that you're purchasing the correct light.
Right. What about getting out at noon? Is that gonna help when there actually might be a little bit of sun out there?
So one of the things that we find that helps with depression overall is that people stay active. But the mainstays of therapy for SAD, or seasonal affective disorder, are having light therapy. Psychiatrists and primary care doctors will also consider the use of antidepressants for people who have this condition.
But seasonally.
But seasonally, correct.
Okay, so there is that again. So where do I go for help if I think I might have this?
So, like a lot of our like a lot of depression that exists in our communities, we usually suggest that people, if they're starting to feel blue or not like themselves, that they have a first conversation with their primary care doctor, their primary care provider. And those providers are able to then see whether this is something that is run-of-the-mill that they feel like that they can handle, or whether it's something more serious or concerning that needs to be seen by a specialist.
Right. And how is this different from depression? Dr.
So
Paul.
with major depressive disorders, they can occur at any point during the year. And so for seasonal affective disorder, it is really during certain time points and most likely to occur during those winter months. And so that's how it's a little bit different.
Okay. So if you then you get your light lamp and that seems to be helping, that's also a sign that this is what it is and not another depression. So this is also keeping in touch with your primary care or a psychiatrist, perhaps.
Correct.
Yep.
Primary care doctors, this falls right within their wheelhouse of it's common enough of a condition out there, and it is remarkable enough that this occurs seasonally for people. People can sense that this is coming on if they've gone through it before. And those folks who have been taken through a appropriate treatment regimen for it, meaning they use the light box and it works for them, then will swear by it in the future because they know that this is coming on and that this fixes things for them.
Right.
And they go back to feeling like go back to feeling normal and feel like they can accomplish all of the things that they usually accomplish in their day-to-day lives. They no longer have these winter blues.
Right. That's remarkable. Now, I also hear even if you go to Florida, that can be helpful. But where does that go in the south? So if somebody does go south, does that help?
It certainly can, because you'd be getting natural exposure to light. However, even individuals who live in Florida may suffer from seasonal affective disorder. One of the bigger risks for developing this disorder is how far north or how far away from the equator you live. And a lot of that has to do with the natural sunlight exposure.
Right. But it's so interesting that it's really young people that get this or find out. So it's also keeping track of our children or even grandchildren. How are they affected? And to see if they might think about getting a light box. Okay. You were about to say something.
I was going to say that depression in general is something that we need to be aware of amongst adolescents and young adults, because these are times when stresses occur in people's lives, and the patterns that you set up early on in your life about whether you're going to address problems that come up, particularly psychological or psychiatric issues, can then have implications for how you function and how you live the rest of your life. So it's important to be aware of these types of issues coming up in people's lives and address them early when they present.
And is there a genetic component to SAD?
So a lot of that isn't clear, but certainly with all depressive disorders, it can run in families. And so if you have family members, whether it be brothers and sisters, mom and dad, aunts, uncles, who might have this seasonal pattern of depression, being just aware that that could be a risk factor, so that if you notice that, getting treatment early and maybe using those light boxes before symptoms start can be quite helpful.
Okay.
I was going to add to that one of the tricky pieces for scientists to tease apart with this is that when you look at families and how they experience this disorder, families also share, though, a lot of the same common environmental factors. And so that makes it really tough for scientists to tease this apart. But it's a good idea that if you see other members of your family being affected by this, that you be on the lookout for it too.
Sure. It might be very common. Everybody just complains about it, but it's something really more than that. Of course, at this season, a lot of people are under stress, and that can lead to issues as well. So your suggestions for dealing with the stress of the holidays and this time of year?
Well, I think as I talk with adults and older adults in general, we deal with a number of different issues that occur. We're frequently dealing with sort of cultural expectations that this is the holiday season and that we're all supposed to be happy. We also tend to get together with family members who we may not have seen throughout the course of the year, and you can see family dramas replay themselves over and over again. Sometimes these are predictable that they're going to occur, and I will suggest to families as they know that the season is upon them to have realistic expectations, to understand what they're going to get out of any type of family or social gathering. Going into it with the idea that not everything is going to be perfect, not everything is going to be like White Christmas.
Right.
Right. And when you have those realistic expectations, you're not going to be disappointed if one or two things don't go the way you thought they were going to be.
Because stress can complicate depression or even SAD, I would think.
It certainly can, and so oftentimes what I will talk with my patients about is trying to keep a routine during the very busy holiday season, because it's easy to get off track. So things to be paying attention to is making sure that you're, sleeping well, or trying to keep a consistent bedtime and wake up time, because that can be helpful, as well as eating healthily and making sure that you're getting out and getting some exercise, even if some of your schedule might be quite disrupted from the holiday season.
Okay, great tips. So what about online resources? What do you recommend?
So one of the online resources that I would recommend would be going to the National Institute of Mental Health, so that's NIMH.gov, and you can search by topic to look for seasonal affective disorder, and there's more information there.
Okay, and that says NIMH.nih.gov.
Correct.
Okay, so we want to go there. Well, Doctors Lamantia and Hall from the Medical Center, thank you both for coming on and talking a little bit about SAD, or the seasonal affective disorder, and what we might look for.
Thank you so much for having us.
And thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.